Over the years, many movie studios have taken a crack at launching a new film franchise based on a popular video game series. Although there have been some successes both commercially and critically, it seems like more often than not, these attempts fail rather than succeed. 2018's Tomb Raider is a classic example of one of these failed attempts. Even though the film did pretty well at the box office, it still never got a sequel that was set up at the end of the film. So today, I want to take another look at this failed franchise starter, to explore the history behind it, find out why we never got a sequel, and offer up some of my personal thoughts on the project. In case you didn't know, 2018's Tomb Raider is not the first adaptation based on the popular video game series. Back in 2001, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, starring Angelina Jolie, did solid numbers at the box office. However, it was met with mostly negative reviews. A sequel was made and released 2 years later in 2003, titled Lara Croft Tomb Raider: The Cradle of Life. This film received around the same reviews, however, the box office was much less. But despite this, Paramount Pictures was still ready to bankroll a third film. Although this third film never happened, as Angelina Jolie was not interested in returning to the character. So the rights remained untouched for several years until Warner Brothers bought them up from Paramount in 2007 as a turnaround deal with plans to reboot the franchise. 2 years later, MGM also bought half of the rights. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place in 2011, when GK Films also acquired the rights, with either MGM or Warner Brothers distributing it. Slowly, work began on making this film a reality, with many different names thrown around on who would play the title character. These included Megan Fox, Jennifer Lawrence, Olivia Wilde, Mila Kunis, Daisy Ridley, Emilia Clarke, and even Kim Kardashian. Although many of these were just rumors, such as the last one. In 2016, a lead actress was finally found, with Alicia Vikander. The script was based on the 2013 Tomb Raider game and would be directed by Norwegian filmmaker Roar Uthaug. Principal photography kicked off in early 2017, filming in Cape Town, South Africa, in addition to some shooting at Warner Brothers Studios in England. By the end of production, the budget was estimated to be somewhere between $90 to $100 million. It debuted at number 2 in the box office on March 16th of 2018, right behind Black Panther, scoring $23 million in its opening weekend. In the US, it made $58 million, and overseas, it raked in an impressive $216 million for a total worldwide gross of $274 million. This means that the film was a certified success when it came to the box office. However, the reviews were a little more mixed. Both scores on Rotten Tomatoes are in the 50s. It has a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb, a 48% score on Metacritic, and a 2.7 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Much of the criticism was pointed at the weak story, one-dimensional side characters, and a lack of fresh ideas. However, a lot of praise was given to the lead, Alicia Vikander. In my opinion, it wasn't the worst start to a franchise, and many of the problems that the film had could theoretically be corrected in a sequel. The movie also left a lot of room for more story to be told, and as we saw, it was a decent hit at the box office. But despite all these factors, we never got that next film. This had a lot of people asking what the heck happened and where's the sequel? Well, this is where things get a little complicated. A month after the film was released in March, work began on a sequel. Amy Jump was hired to write the script, and Vikander was set on reprising the role. A couple of months later, Jump's husband, Ben Wheatley, was in talks to direct the flick, and MGM set a release date of March 19th of 2021. It was rumored that the production was going to kick off in April of 2020, once again shooting in South Africa and England. However, as I'm sure we all know, something else happened in early 2020 which would throw a wrench in these plans. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the production was delayed to summer, and the film was removed from MGM's calendar. During this delay, Jump and Wheatley left the sequel to go pursue other projects instead, and the production was put on hold indefinitely. So the film went back to square one, but not to worry, as they had lots of time to find a replacement. MGM would need to greenlight a sequel before May of 2022, or else the rights would expire and return to their original owners. Luckily, in January of 2021, Misha Green was brought in to write and direct a new version of the film. A few months later, Green announced that the first draft of the script was completed, and the project was given the working title Tomb Raider: Obsidian. We got more updates in July when Alicia Vikander stated that although the film still wasn't greenlit by the studio, she was excited to work on it and very hopeful it would get made. However, the deadline of May 2022 still loomed overhead. There was one more update in September of 2021 that the film was still in development, and then it went radio silent. May of 2022 came and went, which resulted in MGM losing the rights to the series and Vikander officially leaving the property. A sequel to 2018's Tomb Raider was no longer in the cards. The rights returned to the original game studios, Eidos Interactive and Crystal Dynamics, which were then acquired by Embracer Group soon after. Once the rights were up for sale again, a bidding war erupted between film studios on who would grab the property next. In July of 2023, Amazon Studios secured the rights to Tomb Raider, and they announced their big plans for a Marvel-like interconnected universe with a brand new movie and a TV show being spearheaded by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. There were rumors in late 2024 that the TV series would begin filming sometime in early 2025, and that Sophie Turner was attached in the lead role. However, nothing has been officially announced at the time of this video. Additionally, there has been no updates on the movie since Amazon originally bought the rights. I don't know what the hell is going to happen with this Amazon series, as there's been rumors that it was given the green light, but there's also rumors that it's been canceled, so who knows. But as for the connected universe with a new movie, I'm not so sure. It is also worth mentioning that there was an animated series on Netflix in 2024, but from everything I gathered, it was not really liked by the Tomb Raider community. For the time being, we just have to sit back and see what happens. All I know for certain is that we are definitely not getting a sequel to the 2018 film, which is a shame because I really enjoyed it and would like to see more. And that, of course, leads into my thoughts on the film. I'd like to preface this section by saying I have never played any of the Tomb Raider games. This review is coming from someone who knows nothing about the lore of the world, so my thoughts might be different from someone who is a fan of the games. Just keep that in mind. This might be a hot take, given the poor reviews for the film, but I enjoyed it. In fact, I really enjoyed it, but I'm not blind to the flaws found in the film and can understand why it may not have worked for other people. Full disclosure, the Indiana Jones movies are my absolute favorite movies of all time. So any film that's roughly in the same vein, I think I enjoy more than the average theatergoer. And 2018's Tomb Raider is taking a lot of elements from these indie films, so obviously, I'm going to like it. One aspect that you're going to see in every indie movie that is used in this film is the protagonist escaping danger by the skin of their teeth. Indiana Jones is always barely escaping certain death, and in every movie, he gets absolutely beat up. The same thing happens with Lara Croft. She goes through the ringer in this film, and almost dies dozens of times. I think this really grounds the film, and it makes the stakes feel more real than if Lara was just an unstoppable action hero. Speaking of which, I was a big fan of the action in this movie. There were lots of cool sequences which constantly kept things interesting by introducing new problems and conflicts. For example, there's the scene where she escapes the camp and falls into the river. She barely manages to avoid falling down a waterfall by climbing onto the wing of a wrecked plane. But then she needs to jump to the plane before the wing gives out. But then she needs to grab the parachute before the plane falls off the cliff. I love little things like that which keep these action sequences interesting. Alicia Vikander is also amazing in the lead role. From the emotional beats to the comedic beats to the action, she nailed all of it and made it feel believable. She carried this film, and I would have loved to see her reprise the role. However, as much as I enjoyed the film, there are areas in the script that were majorly fumbled, and I think if they were improved, this could have been a fantastic film instead of just an average one. These areas are Lou Ren's relationship with Lara, the character of Matthias Vogel, and Himiko. Let me break each one of these down one by one and explain my problems with them. Lou Ren's character development happens way too fast and is so unbelievable. He goes from being a reluctant, drunken sailor who only takes Lara Croft to this dangerous island for money to a selfless action hero who's willing to give his life to save her. But we don't see anything happen in between point A and point B to make us believe this shift in character. There's the little backstory of him searching for his dad, but I don't think it's enough to warrant such a drastic change in such a short amount of time. Also, we see his boat get destroyed, and he doesn't even mention it or hold any animosity towards Lara for being inadvertently responsible. I mean, this boat is his livelihood. We are led to believe that this boat is his job, his home, and all that's left of his family legacy. But when it wrecks, he's so nonchalant. This might be nitpicking, but it was just an odd choice in my opinion. The next character I have a problem with is Vogel. I loved the concept of this character, but the execution was just off. And I'm not referring to Walton Goggins' performance, who is amazing by the way, but rather the writing. The part I really liked was how he had a more scientific and analytical take when it came to the supernatural elements of the story, which contrasted really well with the character of Richard Croft. However, we only really get snippets of this character trait until halfway through the movie when we are in the tomb. I wish we could have seen this earlier, so we got a better idea of who he was and what his viewpoints were. Additionally, the inclusion of him having kids was, in my opinion, very cheap and undeserved. It felt like the writers didn't want to take the time to craft anything unique about him to make us care, so they threw in him having kids to just make the audience have at least a little sympathy for the villain, and so we could understand his motives. Finally, I have a problem with the main MacGuffin of the story, that being the tomb of Himiko. In every single Indiana Jones movie, the filmmakers take the time to make us understand the history behind the mythical artifact they are after. Even in the bad indie movies like Dial of Destiny and Crystal Skull, the MacGuffins are interesting and well developed, where we understand the history and what they're capable of. We are given some information about Himiko throughout the film, such as the scene where Lara's dad tells her to destroy the evidence, but we don't actually learn anything useful or interesting about it. Just that it has the power of life or death, which is so vague and boring. And by the time we do learn something interesting about Himiko, it is already too late. Everything cool we learn about Himiko and the curse happens when we are already inside the tomb. We need to know some of this cool stuff beforehand, so there's more mystery and intrigue, and we can build up to them finally entering the tomb. With how it's executed in the movie, it feels like there's an exposition dump right before stuff happens. Like, imagine if in Raiders of the Lost Ark, we didn't learn that the Ark potentially has the power of God until Belloc is right about to open it. It robs the story of some mystery and mysticism. The MacGuffin is the linchpin of great adventure movies. If it's not interesting or is poorly explained, then the whole movie suffers for it. 2018's Tomb Raider is a film that was so close to getting a sequel, but due to the pandemic and a change in filmmakers, the rights expired before we got to see another adventure on the big screen. However, no popular property is ever truly dead in Hollywood, and it seems like we will get another reboot somewhat soon. So that's the story of 2018's Tomb Raider, yet another video game movie that failed to launch. But what are your thoughts on the film? Have you seen it? How does it compare to the games? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Tom from Isenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Here's a clue for next week's video. It feels like the first draft of an assignment that the filmmakers turned in at the last moment so they didn't fail a class, but they ended up failing anyway.